continue with our presentation of the four Vaishnava sampradayas. And we arrived at the Vishishtadvaita qualified non-dualism philosophy of the Sri Sampradaya, and we'll continue from here. Before we begin, we'll just offer prayers of respect to our spiritual teachers, to the Lord. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Patakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Saharajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Ayane Prabhave Namaha Madhurjvala Premaja Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudha Apasidanta Twanta Harine Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Shri Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, we're continuing with our discussion on the theme of the Sri Sampradaya, and we're now going to try to provide an overview of some of the key points of the Vishishtadvaita Vedanta philosophy as presented by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada in his articles on the four Vaishnava Sampradayas. So that is the primary source for the material in this presentation, and it is his comments and presentation of the Vishishtadvaita philosophy that we're referring to. In some places we also quote from Srila Prabhupada, where he also makes reference to Ramanujacharya and Vishishtadvaita. So, generally Srila Prabhupada would translate Vishishtadvaita as qualified non-dualism. Qualified non-dualism. So Advaita means non-dual, not two, one thing. But that one, that Brahman, that Para-Brahman is qualified. So what does that mean? We'll explore that. In this presentation, we've so far looked at Sri Vishnu Swami, Rudra Sampradaya, and we touched a little on Shuddhadvaita. The general order of the philosophy of the development of Vaishnava Vedanta philosophy, the general order, is you see that Ramanujacharya, he responded to Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya is the person who presented the Advaita Vad philosophy, the Advaitin view on Vedanta. So generally he's seen as the first kind of propagator and commentator on Vedanta. Although, as we've explained, Vaishnavacharyas, they point out that there were commentaries on Vedanta prior to Shankaracharya by Vishnu Swami. But generally, it's viewed that Ramanuja was the first person to really counter Shankaracharya in his arguments on Vedanta. And then Madhvacharya elaborated further, and Madhvacharya had some disagreements with some of Ramanuja's points, and he had some additional points, so his philosophy is generally referred to next, and then other schools of Vaishnava Vedanta are mentioned. But we're following the format of order given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who presents this Vishnu Swami first as original commentator on Vedanta, and then Ramanuja, and then we'll go on from there to Nimbarkaracharya and Madhvacharya. So, let's have a look at Vishishtadvaita, qualified non-dualism. So, we begin with a quote from Srila Prabhupada, Hare Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada says in Adi Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Vishishtadvaita philosophy, God's energies, expansions and incarnations are considered to be oneness in diversity. In other words, God is not separate from all these things. Everything together is God. So this is a very high level, comprehensive kind of statement which kind of summarizes the concept of Vishishtadvaita. That everything all taken together, that is existence, that is all that exists, and that is, there is one existence, but it comprises categories. And these characteristics are unique to each aspect. So we have the Lord himself, his potencies, and they are, this is how this one Supreme Brahman is qualified. So this is a very nice statement of Srila Prabhupada, which kind of captures the essence of the understanding of Vishishtadvaita. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he explains that the Siddhanta of Ramanujacharya can be kind of summarized in three truths, three categories of truth: Chit, Achit, and Ishvara. So Chit referring to the spirit soul, Achit referring to matter, and Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are the three main subjects of the Vishishtadvaita philosophy. Now, that subject matter is elaborated on, and this is like a framework of understanding. So these three titles here: Pramata, Prameya, and Pramana. So Pramata is the person desiring to know. So the individual who wants to know something. Prameya is the knowledge, that which is to be known, and then Pramana is the means by which that knowledge is gained, or the means by which that knowledge is acquired. So these are the three aspects of knowing: the person who wants to know something, that which is to be known, and the process of acquiring that knowledge. So in Vishishta Advaita, a mumukshu is a person who desires to be liberated, is someone who wants to be known. Now, generally in Gaudiya philosophy, in our Sampradaya's teachings, a mumukshu is someone who desires liberation, and that is considered a type of material desire, something undesirable. So, in our definition of pure devotional service given by Rupa Goswami, Anyabhilashita sunyam jnana karma adi anavritam. Rupa Goswami says that jnana is that pure bhakti should be free from jnana, not in the true sense of the word jnana, but in the sense of jnana marg, in the sense of acquiring knowledge for the sake of knowing alone, acquiring knowledge to acquire liberation. Why is pure bhakti considered contaminated by those desires? Because those are selfish desires. The desire to achieve liberation is the desire to free oneself of suffering. So that is a self-motivated desire. I would like to become free from suffering, therefore I want to achieve mukti, liberation. So that is different to pure devotion, which is just to please Krishna. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilana. Just to please Krishna favorably. It should be done anukul, it should be favorable to Krishna, and anushilana. It should be an activity which is favorable and pleasing to him. So the desire to please Krishna alone, that's pure bhakti. When that desire is mixed with the desire for liberation, it's considered contaminated or mishra bhakti. So someone who desires mukti, they're not considered a pure devotee by Rupa Goswami's definition. So in our sampradaya, then we use this word mumukshu when it comes up in a slightly different way to how they do. They see this is seen differently, because they see this in mumukshu in reference to mukti being to attain Vaikuntha, which is to attain pure devotion. So it's just a slightly different emphasis and a slightly different paradigm, but it's we shouldn't think that this is something less than pure devotion. It's just a different term which has a different understanding. So a mumukshu in the Sri Sampradaya is someone who desires to render pure devotional service to the Lord in Vaikuntha, and he is someone who is desiring to be liberated, understanding that real mukti is bhakti, and so that's just one point there. Prameya, the knowledge, that which is to be known. So then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur presents this as three parts. Tattva, which is truths, which is very much like our Sambandha Jnana. Sambandha Jnana means the relationship between the Lord and the living entities, the Lord and the material nature, the Lord and the spiritual nature, and the Lord's own constitutional nature. Sambandha Jnana. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur here, he says truths, tattva, that's one aspect of prameya. Purushartha, the goal to be reached. What is the ultimate goal of life? That is another thing which is to be known. And finally, upaya is the means to attain that goal. So we can see this is very similar to Sambandha Jnana, Abhideya Jnana, and Prayojana Jnana. Prabhu?
No, the middle one is Prayojana.
Purushartha is Prayojana.
Yes, yes.
And that one is Abhideya.
Abhideya, Hita.
Yeah, that's right. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is presenting their prameya in this way, which is very similar to our three categories of knowledge. Okay, so then 3, pramana, the means of knowledge. Primary source for knowledge, primary means of knowledge, epistemology, is Shastra, Shabda Brahma. Pratyaksha follows sense perception. When sense perception aligns with Shabda, then Pratyaksha is accepted as a means of acquiring knowledge. And when sense perception does not align with Shabda, then it's not. So Shabda is Shabda Brahma Shastra, is the primary source of knowledge, followed by Pratyaksha and Anuman. Anuman refers to influence. Anu means to follow, mana means deliberation or the mind. So to infer, to use one's mental reasoning capacity to understand. So these are the three means of knowledge in Vishishta Advaita Vedanta philosophy, and the primary is Shabda Brahma Shastra. So this is exactly the same as us. We have the same view. So as I was saying, the Prameya, 3 topics, is a very, very similar categorization as given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's in our Shastra primarily spoken to Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami received instruction from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 3 months, and based on his instructions, Sanatana Goswami compiled his writings, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Hari Bhakti Vilas, a commentary on 10th Canto Bhagavatam, and another short book of prayer called Krishna Lila Stava. Those are the main writings of Sanatana Goswami based on the instructions he received from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Madhya Lila, this is recorded, chapter 20, text 124, Srila Prabhupada translates that the Vedic literature gives information about the living entity's eternal relationship with Krishna, which is called Sambandha. So this is very much the same as Tattva, truths. The living entity's understanding of this relationship and acting accordingly is called Abhideya, which is the same as Upaya, means to attain that goal. And then returning home back to Godhead is the ultimate goal of life, called Prayojana, which is the same here as Purushartha, goal to be reached. Okay. So those are the main points I wanted to cover there. Now we look at these different aspects of the Vishishta-Advaita philosophy. So we start with Chit, spirit, soul. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gives a list of qualities, characteristics of the soul. And then he describes types of the situation of those souls, or where are those souls situated, so location. So then he describes the relationship between the individual soul and the Supreme Lord. So first of all, we'll just have a look at these characteristics of the Jivatma, characteristics of the soul. So one is that it's distinct from material objects. This is the first characteristic of the soul, that the conscious living being is distinct from material objects. So, such as the body, the mind, and life air. And then he describes how the soul has these qualities of being Sat. He has existence. Chit, he has awareness of self. And Ananda. Here, Ananda comes in when the soul contacts Bhakti. Prior to contacting Bhakti, the soul has awareness of self, and in its constitutional state is therefore different from matter, and therefore not entangled in material suffering. So in the sense of not being constitutionally involved with suffering, it has Ananda. But as a active experience, the soul's capacity for ananda really comes into effect when it contacts bhakti. Until the soul contacts bhakti, the soul is either in one of these other situations. So it's conditioned by maya, which means it's experiencing suffering, or it's achieved liberation, which in Vishishta Advaita means bhakti. So then it's experiencing ananda. And then there are also souls who are always liberated, eternal associates of the Lord. So just coming back here, the soul has these characteristics, distinct from material objects. So it can't be affected by matter. So just as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, it cannot be cut or pierced by material objects, can't be affected by any material conditions in its constitutional state. The soul that's identifying with the body experiences suffering through that false identification. But the soul proper, in terms of the tattva of the soul, is that it is not affected. It is situated in its own truth, and it has its essential characteristics are that it has awareness of its own existence. It exists and it has awareness of its existence. That is the extent of the jiva's sat and chit characteristics. So the other quality of the soul, Hare Krishna, that is mentioned, Hare Krishna, is that the soul is infinitesimal. It's minute. It's small. It has limited. It's very limited in its size. So it's infinitesimal. And the other characteristic of the soul of chit is that it is beyond the purview of material senses. So with material senses, you cannot identify it. You cannot find it. You can't see it or identify it through material senses. It's beyond the material senses. There is a text written by a follower of the Sri Sampradaya called the Philosophy of Ramanujacharya. I mentioned this in previous class. This was a text that was presented to Srila Prabhupada and he made that comment about it. So in that text we have there are 11 points about chit, about the soul. And I'll just read those and you'll hear how they're very similar to these points that Saraswati Thakur makes, and also how they are very similar to our understanding of the Jivatma from Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So, 1, distinct from material objects such as body, mind and life air. 2, cannot be cut or pierced like material objects. 3, self-illuminated, full of bliss and is eternal. It has no beginning, it has no end. Self-illuminated, I mentioned, not perceived by the material senses. Infinitesimal, or in Sanskrit anu, it's minute. Minute parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Spirit soul is measured in comparison to a minute object, such as 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. So this example is also stated, this statement from Shastra is also given to give some comparison of the size of the soul. That the soul is anu, it's infinitesimal. So then some comparison is given to try and help us understand its minuteness. They are unlimited in number. There is an unlimited number of souls. There is not a set number of living entities. They are unlimited. It's unchangeable. So these characteristics of the soul cannot be changed. They are unchangeable. It is the shelter of knowledge. So it is the shelter of knowledge. It's controlled by the Supreme Controller. It's fully dependent on the Supreme Lord, and it is meant to be enjoyed by the Lord. So these 11 points are the characteristics of the soul according to the Vishishtadvaita philosophy. Okay, so then we look at situation. That is the location. So when we understand things philosophically, there's this is a philosophical point. So what we've heard is the tattva of the soul. We haven't heard anything about where it's located. Often we merge those two things, location and its tattva, its truth. But we shouldn't do that because they're not the same. So the next aspect of understanding chit, spirit soul, is to understand the situation. So Vishishtadvaita says that there's those conditioned by Maya, and that material designations are the result of previous karma. So any material designation that the soul has accepted is the result of previous karma. So it's souls that are conditioned by Maya, and those who have attained liberation, and then those who are eternal associates. And in the liberated state, there's no distinction between souls. This is another point of Vishishtadvaita. There is no distinction between liberated souls. We'll see that this is different for other sampradayas. There is distinction. Madhvacharya makes a point of difference from Ramanuja in this regard. He says that there are distinctions between liberated souls, and they have greater and varying degrees of intensity of ananda and intensity of devotion to the Lord in the spiritual world. And corresponding to that, they have different forms. Whereas Ramanuja, he says that there isn't. There is just liberation. Once you're liberated, everyone's equal. And everyone gets a four-armed form, same as Lord Narayan's, Sarupya Mukti in that sense. So his understanding of Sarupya Mukti is different to ours and different to other Acharya's teachings. Okay, so those are the three categories. So very similar also to us at the same time, also very similar. We also have those three. We talk about Nitya Baddha Jivas, eternally conditioned Jivas, Nitya Mukta Jivas, eternally liberated Jivas, and then Parishads, Nitya Parishads, eternal associates of the Lord. Yeah. So very similar. What is the relationship of the soul with the Supreme Lord? And that's already been described when we looked at the characteristics, that he's fully dependent on the Lord, and that he's actually meant to be enjoyed by the Lord. That is the purpose of the jiva's existence, according to Vishishtadvaita. The actual very purpose of the jiva's existence of chit is to be enjoyed by the Lord. Okay, so now we look at achit, this other next category of knowledge, which is matter, translated roughly as matter, or substance. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur uses matter. I think that keeping the word substance in it, if you're an English language user like I am, then keeping the word substance in mind is useful, because generally as devotees, when we think of matter, we think of products of three modes of material nature. Something that's a product of Prakriti, the three modes of material nature. But you'll see here that we're talking about substance. It's not always referring to. But here we're looking at achit, matter. So matter is of three kinds. So first of all, Shuddha Sattva. So where he says achit, matter, then he refers to Shuddha Sattva, which is what manifests the objects of Vaikuntha. So this is a slight difference to our understanding. It's a subtle difference. We also use the term Shuddha Sattva, but we don't refer to Shuddha Sattva as achit. We refer to Shuddha Sattva as Chit Shakti, manifesting from Lord Balaram, Sankarshan, that all of the objects and everything in spiritual existence is Sandhini Shakti and is manifestation of Lord Balaram. So here, in Vishishtadvaita, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is presenting one category of achit, matter, as Shuddha Sattva, which manifests the objects of Vaikuntha. Those objects are enjoyed by the Supreme Lord, and that is beyond the perception of material senses. So just as the Atma is the Jiva, is beyond the perception of the material senses, so is Shuddha Sattva. It's beyond the perception of the material senses. Then he talks about Mishra Sattva, second category, combination of the three, which is a combination of the three modes of material nature. So Mishra Sattva is matter, combination of the three modes of material nature. So material energy, material world, and everything within it, a product of the three modes of material nature. And it's this Mishra Sattva that covers consciousness of the jiva. So in Sanskrit, sattva, tva means having, ing. It's it is a possessive suffix. So tyaktva, having become free. There's lots of twas. Tattva, that-ness is also. So ness, happiness, having happiness.
The property of quality.
Yes, that's right. Possessing these.
Excuse me, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Sorry to disturb you. We just need a little bit of mercy.
Do you need a key?
Yeah, the key.
So do you know the code for the box? Do you know how to get into the box to get the keys?
Ah, okay.
Do you know it?
Not really.
Okay, I'll teach it to you
Okay.
so that you can do that in the future.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, twa, sattva. Sat means to exist, existence. Sattva, having existence. So sattva is substance. It's something having existence. So having existence. So Shuddha Sattva is pure existence, means Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. Mishra Sattva, Mishra means mixed. So mixed with the three modes existence, mixed with the three modes of material nature, is material energy, prakriti. And it's this Mishra Sattva that covers the jiva. So that's what our body is product of. The body, mind is a product of Mishra Sattva. And then Sattva, Shunya. Shunya meaning devoid of, or not having. And Kala. So these two things, Sattva, Shunya and Kala. So Kala is time and is seen in reference to Prakriti, in reference to the material energy. So it's an energy of Krishna that's particularly relevant in Prakriti. It transforms Mishra Sattva into places and objects which are, thank you, which are enjoyed by conditioned souls. So these are the three categories of Achit. Given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So we've looked at the Chit, particularly in relation to the Jiva, the Atma, as we talk about the soul, and then Achit, matter. So next is Ishvara. This is the third topic of knowledge. So we've some of you came a little late. We were looking at the knower, the known, and the process of knowing. So at the moment we're looking at that which is known, the three things which are known. So we've looked at Chit, Achit, and now the third thing which is to be known is Ishvara. So in my presentation here, we're very much doing quite a high-level, quick summary. It's mostly all in English. We're not citing a Shastra reference for every point, but Ramanuja's views on all of these things are all based on statements of Shastra. So there is a statement of Shastra to support each item that's mentioned. In Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's presentation, he also, in some places, is quite high level in English, and he just kind of makes statements. And then in others, he gives a reference to a Shruti or Smriti Shastra. So in our presentation here, we're keeping this quite high level just to try and give a broad understanding. Okay, so 5 categories of forms of the Supreme. So the first one is Para, then Vyuha, then Vibhava, Antaryami, and Archa Avatar. So Para refers to the Supreme Controller, the ever-existing original personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Narayana. Vyuha refers to expansions, so Sankrishan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, who are in charge of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the universe, and they bestow mercy upon their worshippers. Then Vibhava refers to incarnations such as Rama and Krishna. So various incarnations of Narayan, they're referred to as Vibhava. I haven't put diacritic marks here, so excuse me. Antaryami refers to the Supersoul, as we also use the same, Shastra refers to Paramatma in the same way, so we also refer to this form of the Lord, Antaryami, the Supersoul, and also to the form of Lakshmi Narayan, who manifests in the heart of their worshipper. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur makes this similarity with our concept that the form of the Lord manifests in the heart of the worshipper according to how he is worshipped. So in Vishishta Advaita, the goal of worship is Lakshmi Narayan and Vaikuntha. So Lakshmi Narayan, they manifest in the heart of the worshipper. Similarly, we have the same teaching in our sampradaya that Bhagavan Shri Krishna, Srimati Radharani, Yugal Kishore, because we're Yugal Upasakas, we worship Radha and Krishna, we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Radha and Krishna. So similarly, Radha Krishna manifest in the heart of the worshipper. In Sri Sampradaya, in Ramanuja's teachings, then Lakshmi Narayan manifests within the hearts of their worshippers. And then finally, 5 is Archa-avatar, the deity forms of the Supreme Lord. So they are also forms of the Lord who manifest. Some points are that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely faultless. He is completely aloof from any reactions of karma, so he has no karma. Just as the example that's given is just as the king is not affected by those who receive his favor or punishment for their actions. So this is the Supreme Lord's position, that he gives benedictions, he shows mercy, but he's in no way affected by any of that. Okay, we now just going to touch briefly on this concept of Parinamvad, which comes up in Vishishtadvaita philosophy, and I've got some notes on it here. So this is transformation theory. This Parinamvad is a central teaching of Vishishtadvaita. We've looked at Chit, Achit, and Ishvara. Achit, matter, Mishra Sattva, having gross and subtle forms. These are forms of the Supreme Brahman. But it is not that the Supreme Brahman is changed, it's not that Ishvara has changed in manifesting these energies, but it's that his energy is transforming. So previously we talked about this in relation to Vishnu Swami's teachings, and we looked at Vikara, transformation. Because this Vikara is one of the main points of Shankaracharya. He's saying that there is a transformation. Okay? And then he says that actually this what looks like Brahman transforming is just an illusion. So this point of transformation of energy is very important for Vaishnavas, because Vaishnavas are establishing that the Lord is the possessor of energies, and it's his energies that transform, not he himself. So Ramanujacharya's theory of transformation is called Parinamavad. And he gives an example, which we also use and have heard, which is that of a green bird and a green tree. So the green bird in the green forest or the green tree, it remains distinct from the green forest and tree behind it. It doesn't become, they haven't become one thing, they're distinct. There's a green bird in the green forest, they're two distinct things. From a distance, it all just looks green. You can't even see the bird. But when you actually come to it, you see that there's a green bird in the green forest. So there's two distinct things. So similarly, the Lord's energy and the Lord are distinct from one another, although there is a oneness. The energy is dependent and coming from Him. So in what sense is it coming from Him? He gives the example of a spider that manifests a web. So this is where this example comes from. So just as the spider's web manifests from the spider, but the spider remains unchanged, similarly the Lord possesses energy which manifests in the material world while He Himself remains unchanged. So the Supreme Brahman remains unchanged whilst manifesting unlimited energies. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit here into how there's a refutation of Shankara's theory. But in order to do that, we need to look a little bit at Shankara's theory, which we're going to do by reading from Srila Prabhupada's presentation of Shankara's theory. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela chapter 7, purport to text 121, Srila Prabhupada says, this theory, this is referring to Shankaracharya's Advaitavad theory, this theory states that although the absolute truth is never transformed, we think that it is transformed, which is an illusion. Shankaracharya does not believe in the transformation of the energy of the absolute truth, for he claims that everything is one and that the living entity is therefore also one with the Supreme. This is the Mayavad theory. So this is Srila Prabhupada's very succinct statement to try and capture to capture the Mayavad theory. So Shankaracharya is saying that the absolute truth is never transformed, but we think that it's transformed, and that's our illusion. And actually, there's no difference between there's only one object, Brahman. He doesn't recognize any differences in Brahman. He's just saying that what seems like differences is just our illusion. So
that is his Maya theory. And that is his Maya theory, that everything is Maya, because
yes.
we do not understand.
Yes, that's right. So Shankaracharya teaches that the transformation of Brahman into the creation and the living entities is an illusion, which he calls vivarta. So he calls this transformation of Brahman into the apparent transformation of Brahman, which he doesn't believe in because he says Brahman is unchanged, but he calls this an illusion called vivarta. It's a delusion. Vivarta means delusion or wrong. So actually everything is one Brahman. Sri Ramanujapad points out that the transformation takes place by the potency of the Lord's energies. Subtle matter and external potency of the Lord transforms parinama into gross matter. So there's from Prakriti, Krishna's energy transforms subtle matter, and subtle matter transforms into gross matter. So this is his understanding. Okay. And that the Supreme Lord is unaffected by this transformation. This theory of the energy of Brahman transforming is called Parinamavad. Sri Ramanujapad accepts the eternal existence of the Supreme Lord and his potencies. And he bases this on the statements of Shastra. So he quotes various Shastras to state how the Supreme Lord is unchanging and ever existing, and that it's his energy which is transforming. Yes?
What is the reference? Sorry, I missed that. What you're reading?
From Adi Leela, chapter 7, text 121. Okay, so the Sanskrit word vivarta means illusion. Shankaracharya through basically through word jugglery, through quite complex grammatical rules of interpreting Shastric statements, he presents that the living being's conception that Brahman has transformed and produced the material world and the living beings is just an illusion. And he says that there's only one Brahman. And once we become free from illusion by knowledge, we will realize that nothing exists besides Brahman. However, the correct understanding of Vivarta illusion is based on Shastra, and that's as follows. So this is what Srila Prabhupada says about what actual illusion is. So there is such a thing as illusion, that the living entities are under, but it's not this type of illusion that Shankaracharya is presenting. There's a different type of illusion that we're under. So that we are under illusion, conditioned souls, but it's not that the illusion is that everything is actually one Brahman. So what is the illusion that we're under? So that's explained by Srila Prabhupada, same purport, same verse. The example of misunderstanding a rope to be a snake is mentioned in the Mandukya Upanishad. By the way, Shankaracharya refers to the same example, same Mandukya Upanishad, snake for a rope example, in his presentation of what illusion is. So it's the same Shastric statements, but one being presented differently. He says, so just a second. Yes. But it's what this example is meant to explain is the error of identifying the body with the soul. Since the soul is actually a spiritual particle, as confirmed by Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vangsa Jiva Loke, it is due to illusion, Vivartavad, that a human being, like an animal, identifies the body with the self. This is a proper example of Vivarta or illusion. So, Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that the illusion is to think that the body is us. Just as it is an illusion to think the rope to be a snake, it's an illusion to think that we are the body. So this is the illusion. Not that Brahman has transformed into the jiva and prakriti. Prabhu.
Prabhu, I think it is a discussion between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prabhu Saraswati, isn't it?
Prabhu.
So this seventh chapter of Adi Lila is in that same discussion.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling all this, Prabhupada is explaining.
Yes, that's right, Prabhu. Yeah. Okay. So so according to Ramanujacharya's theory, Vishishtadvaita, although the energies of the Lord are one, each keeps its individuality, Vishishta. So the individuality of each energy is always maintained. This is the point. So we are talking about one thing, Bhagavan, Parabrahman, Krishna. But he has unlimited energies and they all maintain their individual characteristics and identities. But that complete whole is the absolute truth. So it's qualified oneness. So there's a oneness, we're talking about one thing, Brahman, God, Parabrahman, Bhagavan. But there is, each aspect of the Lord has got its own unique characteristics, and those unique attributes are eternal to those energies. Okay. So, I'm going to read a little bit more from Srila Prabhupada, same purport, same verse. According to Sri Ramanujapada's theory, Vishishtadvaita, although the energies of the Lord are one, each keeps its individuality, Vishishta. For example, a father is one fact, and a son generated from the father is a second fact. Thus, both of them are truth, although one is generated from the other. This generation of a second, independent truth from the first truth is called vikara, or transformation resulting in a byproduct. The Supreme Brahman is the absolute truth, and the energies that have emanated from him are also existing separately, such as the living entities and the cosmic manifestation, are also truths. This is an example of transformation, which is called vikara or parinama. To give another example of vikara, and we have cited this previously in relation to Vishnu Swami, milk is a truth, but the same milk may be transformed into yogurt. Thus, yogurt is a transformation of milk, although the ingredients of yogurt and milk are the same. So these are examples to try and help us understand the difference. Yes, Guru.
Cool. So, just having a discussion on this topic.
Mm.
So, the yogurt and the milk example, it's the same ingredients, right? So, and then the son and the father, they're different individual personalities. So, and then we've got the energy and the Supreme Lord, and then it's only the energy that transforms.
Yes.
So, the living entity, the spirit soul, is it the part of the Lord's energy, or is it part of the Lord himself?
Part of the Lord himself.
But not the Lord's energy, right?
They are the jiva is a energy of the Lord, but so he's got certain characteristics that don't change. But the matter has certain another energy of the Lord, Achit, Mishra Sattva. Matter is also another energy of the Lord, but it has its own characteristics, which are different to the characteristics of the spirit soul.
Right, so if the energies of the Lord change, and the
Mishra Sattva transforms,
and the material energy of the Lord changes, is it not possible that the spiritual energy of the Lord would also change?
So that's the point about the defining characteristics of the jiva. It's unchangeable. And that's also the characteristic of the Lord, that he is also unchangeable.
So, but if the jiva is part of the energy of the Lord, and the energy
different category of energy.
Okay, so the spiritual energy doesn't change.
Correct.
So material energy only changes.
So
that's where the confusion lies, and
yes.
They can be mixed up with one another. If you're not understanding.
Yes.
You could mix the two together.
That's right.
So, Prabhu, when you talk about the qualitative state, are we talking about this? The qualitative?
So quality is in terms of quantitative differences and qualitative differences between the jiva and the Lord.
So is it the same thing?
Is what the same thing?
Like the milk and the curd and the philosophy which says that the individual and the Lord, they are the Lord. The individual is a part of the Lord. Jiva is a part of the Lord.
Yes.
And jiva is also the energy when it comes to spirit and matter. So where does this quality? Where does this sit?
I see. So the Lord's energy, Prakriti, Mishra Sattva, it transforms from subtle to gross and produces objects in the world according to the karma of the jivas. So everything's manifesting in the material world. That's all changing, right? So that's one thing that's changing, the achit. But the chit, the jiva, he's not changing in tattva. His existence and his awareness of his own individual existence, that doesn't.
Eternal.
It doesn't get changed. It doesn't transform. So it's a fixed characteristic. So the jiva is always aware of itself. Always. That can never change. But the Lord's material energy, the subtle form of material energy, that manifests into gross material energy. So that's changing. That's a transformation of energy, producing a byproduct. But the jiva, the jivatma, it never produces any byproducts. It's only the material energy that does that. So all the varieties of forms of things in the material energy, that's happening by transformation, parinam. But the jiva, he doesn't ever produce anything. So the jiva purely is aware of itself. Its awareness of itself is its chit, potency, and its existence itself is its sat, quality. when it's free from material suffering, when it's no longer identified with material suffering, that is the base level of its ananda potency. When it connects with bhakti, then ananda becomes much bigger. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we've looked at these two things: vivarta, which is illusion; misidentification. Misidentification of the body as the self. That's vivarta, according to Ramanuja. That's illusion. And vikara is the transformation, which is called parinam in his view, and that's the transformation of the energies of the Lord, not the transformation of the Lord himself. Okay? Good. So, we are just going to move on. So we've looked at that a bit. There's a lot more there, but we're going to move forward. And we're just going to cover this next section before we take a 2-minute break, just to refresh. Okay, so now we're looking at the process of worship. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he now starts to bring in the process of worship, which is quite interesting. With Srila Advaita and Vishnu Swami, he didn't do that. Because the process of worship in that line, all that's known is from Vallabhacharya. We don't really know much about, there's not much statements around Vishnu Swami's. Sridhar Swami, we know that he was a worshipper of Lord Nrsimhadev. Bilvamangal Thakur, we know that he was a worshipper of Krishna. But he didn't really go into the process of worship when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he was talking about Srila Advaita, and because the current, my understanding of why is because current Srila Advaita is Vallabhacharya's Pushtimarg. But here with Ramanuja and Sri Sampradaya, he goes into more details around the process of worship. Okay, so quoting from Sri Bhashya of Ramanujacharya. So Ramanujacharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra is called Sri Bhashya. And quoting that, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur presents the process of worship, which he summarizes into these 5 points. So, bhakti is the means and ultimate goal of life. So the process of devotional service is both the means and the goal. So you don't do bhakti to attain liberation, to merge into Brahman or something like that, which is also talked about in some Advaitin views, that bhakti is just a means for acquiring knowledge by which you achieve mukti, which they look at as impersonal liberation. Ramanujacharya is saying that bhakti itself is the means of attaining mukti, and real mukti is to enter into Vaikuntha, to serve Lakshmi Narayan, which is bhakti. So bhakti is both the means and the goal. Knowledge and renunciation attained through bhakti. One in knowledge comes to bhakti. So again, kind of pushing against Shankaracharya, that jnana is producing renunciation, and complete renunciation is needed in order to attain mukti. Ramanuja is presenting that by bhakti, renunciation and knowledge in their true form come about naturally. So we can relate to this. Srila Prabhupada often quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes Srimad Bhagavatam to explain that causeless knowledge. So, come from bhakti. So one in knowledge comes to bhakti, and rather that by cultivation of real knowledge one comes to bhakti. So Ramanuja is really putting forward that bhakti is the means and the end, and the purpose of all spiritual practice and knowledge. So then he explains how all Varnashram activities are meant to please the Lord. Varnashram activities are very important in the process of worship presented by Ramanujacharya as a means of pleasing Krishna. So that is there. And that bhakti is attained in a step-by-step, there's a progress in bhakti, and Ramanujacharya presented that there's a step-by-step progression of bhakti from the practice to the perfection, at which point there's also continued devotional service. and that bhakti is the recommended path of all great souls, great sages, and Shastra, such as the Vedas and Vedanta, and that he very much establishes the process of bhakti in Shastra. Okay, so a few points in relation to this. Ramanujacharya wrote a book called Gadyatraya, which presents Dasya Ras to Lakshmi Narayan, and attaining Vaikuntha as the ultimate goal of life, which is attained through unalloyed devotion. So it's clear that Dasya Ras Bhakti is the goal of the Sampradaya, and the object of worship is Lakshmi Narayan. He says that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that Gadyatraya, this text, is an anthology, a collection of poems compiled spontaneously by Ramanujacharya himself. And it has 3 parts to it, this text, and it's considered very important to the followers of Ramanuja. So one is called Sharanagati Gadya. Sharanagati Gadya, and this is from Gadyatraya. So this text, Gadyatraya, has got 3 parts to it. Sharanagati Gadya, which is a conversation between Sri Ramanujacharya and Sri Ranganath Ji, the main deity of the Sampradaya's main temple. Sri Ranga Gadya outlines, so this is the second part called Sri Ranga Gadya, outlines how the author seeks refuge at the Lord's lotus feet. And then the third part is called Sri Vaikuntha Gadya, and it outlines the process of how other devotees can obtain complete shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. So this particular text, which has these parts to it. So there's 5 types of worship which are highlighted by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as performed by members of the Sri Sampradaya. So the first is Abhigamana, which is the cleansing of the Lord's temple and engagement in service, including processions of the deities, service in the courtyards of the Lord's temple, basically temple seva as we know it, including all types of service in the temple. Upadana, collecting ingredients for worship, so it's like gathering sandalwood and flowers and preparing for puja. Ijja, the actual offering of worship itself to the Lord. Swadhyaya, similar as we do, study of Shastra, but it also includes the chanting of mantras, chanting of prayers, glorification of the Lord. And then Bhagavad Anusandana, which is the overall cultivation of devotional service in everything that one does, dedicating everything, all of one's activities to the Lord. So these 5 types of worship are performed by members of the Sri Sampradaya as their practice of bhakti.
Prabhu, you said Abhigamana?
Yes, Upadana.
Ijja.
Ijja is the 3rd, and Swadhyaya is the 4th, and 5th is Bhagavad Anusandana. Yeah. Bhagavad Anusandana means the cultivation of devotional service, including connecting all one's activities in service, so varnashram duties. Swadhyaya is chanting as well as study. Ijja, worship, etc. Okay, Prabhu?
Thank you.
Okay, so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to his disciples and to his followers, he would quote from Ramanujacharya. There is a book titled Prapanam Amrita. Are you familiar? You may have heard of this title. It was written by a follower of Ramanujacharya, and Andrapurna was the name of the follower of Ramanujacharya who wrote this book, Prapana Amrita. So Prapana means to submit oneself entirely to the Lord, to dedicate oneself completely to the Lord.
It's Prapati and Sharanagati, so Prapati.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so Prabhuji is mentioning Sharanagati and to offer prayers and to give oneself to the process of self-surrender. Essentially, is the nectar, prapanam amrita, the nectar of self-surrender to the Lord. So this text is also very important to the followers of Ramanujacharya, and it highlights the importance of serving Vaishnavas as the highest form of seva. So the best way to please Krishna is by serving the devotees, and this text particularly highlights the importance of that activity of serving the Lord by serving the devotees. And it's superior to serve the devotees. So rather than serving the Lord, it's more important to serve the devotees. This is the emphasis. So it's a greater honor to be able to serve devotees than it is to be able to offer an arti, for example. So to serve Vaishnavas is superior. And then it propagates the importance of avoiding mundane association and sense gratification and cultivating full-time devotional service. Okay, so these are some of the points that we've chosen to highlight from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's presentation. I hope that is somewhat helpful. We're just going to take a 2-minute break, and then we're going to look at trying to cover the Kumara Sampradaya between 1:40 and 2 o'clock, and then we're going to look at Madhva Sampradaya between 2 o'clock and 2:30, and that will bring us to the end of our three-course presentation. Yes, Mataji?
Prabhuji, I just have a question. I'm just
Yes.
curious.
Yes.
Like Sri Sampradaya, they mostly teach you Dasyaras.
Yes.
So I was just thinking about on Vishnu Swami, because Pushtimar, they carry Laddu Gopal, so that is more in a Vatsalya bhav.
Yes. They teach Braja Bhakti. Pushti Marg teaches all rasas of Braja Bhakti.
Oh, okay.
They
Not
do.
just Vatsalya.
No, not just Vatsalya.
Oh.
They do have quite an emphasis on worship of baby Krishna.
Yeah.
But the teachers in that sampradaya, according to the proclivity of the devotee, as they develop in their devotion, they're encouraged to cultivate a particular line of Braja Bhakti.
Right.
So, but that's Vallabharacharya.
Right.
Vallabharacharya, who is the contemporary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and who's very much influenced by the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gadadhar Pandit, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So their line is very much enriched by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
And
Yeah.
any idea about in which mode did Vrindavan Prabhu worship Krishna? Was it
Sakhi Bhav.
Sakya.
Yeah, no, Sakhi. He
Oh, Sakya.
Bilvamangal Thakur, he had the bhav of a Sakhi. He was following the bhav of a Sakhi. Yeah, so he's a very unique example of a devotee. So he refers to, as we mentioned previously, because there's mention to the Vishnu Swami line, then he is understood to be connected to that line. But his mode of devotion was very much to Krishna in Sakhi Bhav. Yeah. Jai. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just take a 1-minute break, and then we'll continue on with the Kumara Sampradaya and then Brahma Sampradaya, Madhvacharya. And we're looking at Kumara Sampradaya, Nimbarka Sampradaya. And again, this is a overview as given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So we're just capturing some of the main points that he's made in his Full Vaishnava Sampradaya text. So it's high level. Let us carry on. Before we do, I'll just offer a prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhanaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so Nimbarka Sampradaya, also known as Hamsa Sampradaya, as well as Kumara and Chaturshana Sampradaya, and also Sanak Adi Sampradaya. So known by various names. It's one of the main 4 Vaishnava sampradayas. And the founder is Sri Nimbarkacharya, Nimbaditya. And the Vedanta philosophy is Dvaita Dvaitavad, which Srila Prabhupada translates as monism and dualism. Monism and dualism. So Advaita is dual, 2 things. Advaita, non-dual. So Prabhupada says monism and dualism. Okay, so we'll begin by looking at Nimbarkacharya. So Nimbarkacharya is a great personality and a very interesting personality. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that there's various understandings about his history. It's also mentioned, some Vaishnavas also mention that he was present during the recitation of Bhagavatam even. So going right back. And that that his father, a sage called Aruna Muni, was present during the time of Bhagavatam recitation, and that he was present during the time of Vajranabha's rule in Braj. So Vajranabha being the grandson of Lord Krishna, who established Brajadam after Lord Krishna's departure. So these are also some traditional views on Nimbarkacharya. So it is said that some say that his appearance date was around the 7th century, some say 12th to 14th, so there's quite a wide timeline there, and so there's some quite differences in opinion. So we're just representing what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he doesn't give a specific date. He just mentions that some people have said, and it is understood in some parts that, so he doesn't give a specific opinion.
This is interesting because I know, and like my grandparents and their grandparents, they would not note down their birth date, like
Right.
when they were born or anything. So it's interesting that we can go back so far to note down dates. That's an interesting thing.
Yes.
I don't know whether that's through astrology or what they've used to.
I know that in terms of our sampradaya, it's often in reference to other events.
Yes.
So, for example, the dates of Goswamis. We know that Jiva Goswami was signed lands by Aurangzeb, and that was recorded. Not by Aurangzeb, by two before Aurangzeb. Akbar, thank you. And that therefore his will was signed at a certain date prior to his departure. So therefore, it's estimated that his departure was such and such a year. So the writings of books, often an author will say that this book was completed at such a time. So then it's known that in reference to that date that someone has. So yeah, with that cultural approach, then often dates are very obscure.
That's right.
Yeah. So he's understood to be obviously he's a divine personality, avatar of the Lord's chakra. Also, he revealed aspect of his identity to his intimate follower as a Saki, Srimati Rangadevi, from our Asta Sakis, as we refer to the Asta Sakis in Krishna Lila, the friends of Srimati Radharani. So Rangadevi being one of those. He wrote a commentary on Vedanta known as Parijat Saurabh Bhasya, in which he presents the Dvaita Advaita Vad. Some Vaishnavas are of the opinion that this commentary was written actually by his disciples Srinivas and Keshava, but in his name. Detail. Nimba means neem tree. Aditya and Aka are synonyms for the sun. And this name refers to a particular pastime of his, which we'll hear about shortly. So Nimbarka. Okay, so that's a little about his what we know about his history. So some pastimes of Nimbarka Acharya. So we can start with this one regarding holding the sun or chakra in the neem tree. Let me just see here. There is a text by a great personality called Audamba Acharya, and he wrote a text called Nimbarka Vikranti, which describes some pastimes of Nimbarka Acharya. So these stories, Leela's pastimes, appreciations of him come from that text. And it's called Nimbarka Vikranti. Yeah, and Audamba Acharya is said to be the author of that text. Let me see. It's said that his parents lived at Nimbagram, and that whilst a Buddhist monk was visiting the home in order to facilitate and honour the guest, completing his vow of not eating after sundown, Nimbarka held the sun up by manifesting the brightness of the sun as his Vishnu chakra. So it's said that there was a Buddhist monk who came to visit the family, and that he had a vow of not eating after sundown because it was getting late, and they wanted to maintain the tradition of feeding a guest and welcoming a guest appropriately. Then to serve his parents and to uphold the tradition, then he held up the sun, so that he manifested Vishnu chakra, and that by that the sun, he was in a neem tree, and that he was sat in the neem tree, manifested the chakra which looked like the sun, and the sun kept shining, and then the guest was able to take his meal. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains a slightly different version, which says that he was debating with a Jain sannyasi. So rather than a Buddhist monk visiting the family, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that it was a Jain sannyasi who Nimbarka was debating with, and that the Jain sannyasi had a rule of not eating after sundown, but the debate was going on. So for the same reason, in order to be able to ensure that he ate his meal, he first of all, the Jain sannyasi said, "No, I'm going to refuse. I'm not going to eat," and that wasn't acceptable to him. And he then went up into a neem tree and held up the sun so that his guest could eat. So it definitely speaks to the nature of his character. So in both instances, a Buddhist monk and a Jain monk, they've got a different approach to Vaishnava in terms of they would have been having a debate, an argument, but still to serve the guest and to render service and to show due respect. And this is, highlighting his saintly character, that he was free from any envy or anger or any negative quality that would see any. His heart is full of love and compassion for everyone. So as such that to uphold the vows of those people, he would do such a thing. So this speaks to his great nature and magnanimous Vaishnava nature.
It makes sense. The Jains even today, they don't. The strict Jains don't eat after sunset.
Right.
Even today.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then we have some other pastimes here, which I'll read from. So he was visiting a deity, a temple in Kerala of Anantashesh, Padmanabha Swami temple in Kerala. I expect it's a famous temple. Yeah. And that a group of envious brahmanas tried to attack him during this visit for some reason, not mentioned. At that time, this Audamba Acharya himself appeared from the fruit of an Udambara tree, which had fallen to the ground before Nimbarka, who had touched it with his foot. And then from touching that, this Udambara Acharya, he manifested. So this Udambara Acharya, disciple, follower of Nimbarka, he's also a divine personality who actually appeared as a result of the touch of Nimbarkacharya's foot. So it was around this all happened at the same time according to this pastime. So despite witnessing this amazing event of this personality appearing, then the Brahmanas, they became envious and attacked Nimbarka, who then invoked a ring of fire around the offenders, holding them at bay. And being angered by the offence of the Brahmanas towards his pure devotee, Lord Padmanabha appeared himself, and he was about to attack these Brahmanas himself, the Lord was, because he was so angry with them for their offence to Nimbarkacharya. And at this time Nimbarka prayed to the Lord for their forgiveness, and being pleased with the Lord, being pleased with Nimbarka, then the Lord desisted, and he poured his mercy onto Nimbarka. This was witnessed by the Brahmanas, who were very much astonished, and now they became thoroughly humbled, and they surrendered themselves to Nimbarkacharya and became his disciples and followers. So this pastime is a glorified pastime of Nimbarkacharya in the Nimbarka Sampradaya. There's another pastime where he converted a community of Jains. That's another place. So Nimbarka, he engaged in a Digvijay tour. As you'll hear, many great, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he travelled all through India in to spread the Sankirtan movement and to preach Krishna Bhakti. So this is traditional for many great acharyas and great sages, but also for scholars. Scholars would also travel and present their arguments. But Nimbarka was travelling, and at one point he passed a Jain festival, and it's not mentioned here where that was. But as he passed, some members of this Jain community, they were abusive towards him. So Nimbarka, he responded by just pushing his toe into the ground, and this caused a great gushing river to spring forth and flow towards where the Jains were holding this festival, and they were going to get washed away. The Jains immediately surrendered to him, and as they approached him for forgiveness, then the river disappeared, and they surrendered and became his followers. So this is another pastime. So after completing his tour, his Digvijay tour, Nimbarka settled in Nimbagram in Braj, in Vrindavan Dham. And at that time he was approached by another Digvijay scholar, and his name was Vidyanidhi, and he was a Shakta, he was a worshipper of Durga Devi. So Nimbarka defeated him, and Vidyanidhi became his disciple, and he became one of his most famous disciples, personality called Srinivas, who was mentioned earlier as someone who the Sampradaya's commentary on Vedanta is also ascribed to him. So to this personality, who became a very surrendered disciple of Nimbarkacharya, it was to him, to Srinivas, that Nimbarkacharya revealed his identity as Sakhi in Krishna Lila, Rangadevi Sakhi. It's also said that Sri Narada Muni also appeared to Nimbarkacharya there in Nimbagram, and it was from him that he received a deity of Hamsa avatar, the Lord's like swan form, swan incarnation, who teaches transcendental knowledge. So this appearance of Narada Muni to Nimbarka also happened there in Nimbagram, and he received his worshipable deity from him at that time. And this deity is still respected and worshipped in the Sampradaya, and the Sampradaya is also known by the term Hamsa Sampradaya. So these are some pastimes and details of the life of Nimbarkacharya, which you may or may not have known. The Nimbarkacharya Sampradaya is still very active and prominent, and their followers are very strict Vaishnavas. They follow they follow Nimbarkacharya's teachings with great adherence, and in Brajadam you'll see, when you visit Vrindavan, you'll often see followers of Nimbarkacharya.
Different tilak.
Sorry?
Slightly different. The color of the tilak is different. Is the mantra different as well? Prabhu?
Yes,
They Radha Krishna.
Yeah, so they.
Radha Vallabh Sampradaya.
Yeah, so Nimbarkacharya, they have some different. Again, it's a big tradition with a great history, many great acharyas and great saints, and there's different variations within the sampradaya. But yes, they have different characteristics to us in terms of the type of tilak and focus of mantras. They chant Radhi Sham, Radhi Sham, Sham Sham, Radhi Radhi, and they promote Sakhi Bhav as a primary mood of worship of Krishna, and they have various aspects of their prayojan which are different to us. But we'll look at a little bit at their teachings and some aspects of their worship. So we have a list here of the Nimbarka Sampradaya, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur presents this list from Bhakti Ratnakar, which is a Gaudiya Vaishnava text written after the time of the Goswamis. So, well, in bold, I've highlighted those who are either the originators of Shastra or commentators on Shastra, and whose commentaries are the primary reference points for the Sampradaya. So we have the four Kumaras, Narada, Nimbarkaracharya, and then his very prominent disciples, Srinivas and Bhaskara. They're commentators on Vedanta, so their Vedanta view is very much formed by these personalities. And then in more recent times, Keshava Bhatta, who is our Keshava Kashmiri, who was who received mercy from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's scholarly lila, and who took Mahaprabhu's blessings. And from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we can see how Keshava Kashmiri, he became a great Vaishnava, and his commentary on Vedanta is very much prominent in their line. Yeah. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as a true follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was always drawing connections within the Sampradaya. So this is our subjective viewpoint. So this is the nature of spiritual reality, that it is absolutely subjective. Okay, so one of the main texts is Sanat Kumar Samhita and also Narad Bhakti Sutra. These are very important texts in the Sampradaya. Sanat Kumar Samhita presents Krishna's daily pastimes in detail, very similar to, and is referenced by our acharyas in their writings on Krishna's daily pastimes, such as Krishnadas Kaviraj's Govinda Lilamrita. And Sanat Kumar Samhita is often referenced by our acharyas. Narad Bhakti Sutra is also often referenced by our acharyas. Narad Bhakti Sutra is very important in the Nimbarka Sampradaya. Srila Prabhupada began a commentary on Narad Bhakti Sutra. I think the first 12 or so verses he translated and wrote purports to, but he didn't complete that. Those 4 books, of 3 that I'm aware of like that. Vedanta Sutra, Srila Prabhupada started a commentary on that, just did the first 4 verses, which interestingly are traditionally viewed as, even just those first 4 verses of Vedanta are considered complete in themselves. If you do a commentary on those 4, then that can also be considered a commentary on the text, which is an interesting point. And then the Kulashekara prayers, the Alvar Kulashekara, his prayers, he started a translation on the full set, but he didn't complete that. And also Narad Bhakti Sutra. He focused on other Gaudiya Vaishnava texts and Bhagavatam. So, yes, I mentioned that those are bold because they've given commentary on Vedanta. Okay, so yeah, it's very much prominent today in Vrindavan. And now we'll look at a brief overview of Dvaita Advaita Siddhanta, which is summarized by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So there is a text called Dashloki by Nimbarka, and that presents the 10 kind of main precepts of their teachings, of their sampradaya. So, and that this gives reference to Parijat Saurabhasya. So these are a presentation of these 10 points.
Prabhu, just a quick question.
Yes.
So you know how it's talking about the fifth Veda?
Yeah.
Mahabharata is also known as the fifth Veda.
That's right. So they accept Mahabharata.
Yeah.
As Shastra.
So just a side question. The Puranas, are they just stories from the Mahabharata? Or are they two separate books, like the Bhagavad Purana?
Yeah, so there's different Puranas. We talk about 18 primary Puranas, and they are separate texts to Mahabharata, and they...
Yes,
yeah.
but is other, like the Bhagavad Purana,
yeah.
a lot of stories that are in the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Purana are like in
Overlap,
the same text.
Yes.
So is it that the Bhagavad Purana is just a summary of the stories in Mahabharata? Is what I'm trying to say.
Right. No, it's not. No, it's
No.
its own category of Shastra, and a Purana has also characteristics. So there's different classifications of Puranas, and according to the classification of the Purana, it has different subject matter. So a Mahapurana, such as Srimad Bhagavatam, is the full kind of set of characteristics of a Purana text, and in many cases the focus in terms of the avatars and the leelas may be the same, but there's often a slight different angle of vision. So Srila Prabhupada explains about Puranas in 3 modes, tamasic, rajasic and sattvic.
Yes.
And then in the sattvic category, the Shuddha Sattva Amala Purana, the pure Purana, which has got no a perspective from the modes of nature, from sattva or rajas or tamas. So we talk about Srimad Bhagavatam as that category of Purana.
So the reason I asked the question is, then how is it that the Puranas and the Mahabharata are known as the fifth Vedas?
Yes,
the Mahabharata specifically, it mentions this verse in the Mahabharata that it's the fifth Veda.
Yeah, so
how can, if they're two different texts and entirely separate,
yeah,
how can they both be fifth Veda?
Yeah, so with this Vedanta school of Nimbarka, they accept Shabda Brahma as primary evidence, pramana. So from that viewpoint of what's the pramana, so they accept Puranas as part of Shabda Brahma evidence. So that's the point here, is that when they're making a statement of Siddhanta, then they will reference Puranas as a authority pramana. So that's actually the point here, is that this is about the prameya, the source of knowledge, the epistemology. So not all schools will accept Puranas; they'll just accept Shruti literature. But the point that Nimbarka is making here is that they'll accept Puranas as a source of evidence, Vedic evidence. Yeah. As do we, Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Adi, but primarily we focus on Bhagavatam as the spotless Purana, transcendental Purana. Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahansyam Puranam Eka Amalam. Amalam, just Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahansyam Ekam. So Bhagavatam is accepted in a different category. It's a Purana. It fits all the characteristics of a Mahapurana, but it is transcendental. It's not in any way presenting a sattvic or a rajasic or a tamasic viewpoint. Yeah. Mahabharata we also accept, but we see that our acharyas explain that Mahabharata has a slightly, in some aspects, Mahabharata presents a more sattvic viewpoint than a transcendental viewpoint, such as, for example, the passing of the Pandavas. So if you read Bhagavatam's description of the Pandavas' return back to Godhead, they return to Krishna's Leela in self-same bodies. whereas Mahabharata presents more sattvic viewpoint of the Pandavas' liberation. Yeah, so those are differences. Yeah. But here the point is that they, in this sampradaya, they accept Puranas as fifth Veda and therefore as evidence for Shabda Brahman. Okay? And then 2, Vishnu is the doer of everything. 3, advancement in bhakti depends on faith and steadiness. So they have this emphasis. You need shraddha and you also need nishta, faith in your bhakti practices. So that's very much present. If you see and interact with Nimbarka Vaishnavas, then they very much have this mood. Nothing is equal or superior to love of Krishna. So Krishna Prema there's nothing equal to it, there's nothing beyond it. There's no form of spiritual perfection beyond Krishna Prema. And the glories of the Lord's eternal abode. So they accept Brajadam as the eternal abode of the Lord, and they glorify the Lord's eternal abode. And these are references to Vedanta Sutra, which these points are supported by. Liberated souls are eternal associates in the spiritual world. The Supreme possesses power to appear and disappear at his will. Vaishnavas are eternal and transcendental, and then they have a great emphasis on the glories of prasada. Yeah. Okay, so
Sounds like our sampradaya.
yeah. So yeah, well, it's very good to look at some of the So essentially, when we look at the 4 Vaishnava sampradayas, they all support exclusive devotion to Krishna, to Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord. There may be some variety in understanding, but amongst Nimbarka, Madhva, and our line, there's a acceptance of Krishna. Sri Sampradaya, in terms of Ramanujas, they have a focus on Lord Narayan. But that is not the only point of focus within that Sampradaya. We should understand that there's a broad tradition, and that different acharyas within that tradition, within their realization and transcendental knowledge, do present different aspects of worship of the Lord as well. Okay, so here we're looking at the soul, the living entities. They're one and different from the Supreme Lord. So they're qualitatively similar, but quantitatively different. So same as we teach. So here we have Dvaita, Advaita. We say Beda, Abeda. It basically means the same thing. The difference is Achintya. We talk about Achintya, Beda, Beda. They don't mention Achintya. That's the kind of difference philosophically. Is how is it that those two things exist at the same time? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained that those two differences, the oneness and the difference, they exist at the same time by the Lord's inconceivable potency. So he specifically made that point, and that's the kind of essential difference. There are some interesting articles on where these ideas have kind of been shared amongst sampradayas over time, but in terms of the living entities, that the one and different from the Lord, the living entity is always controlled by the Lord, and that there are 3 categories of living entities: the eternally liberated, those who are conditioned by Maya, and then those who have become liberated. So again, that was just the same as we read previously. So we can make those same connections. That the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So this is an important point, that the objects in this world are reflections of real objects from the spiritual reality. Inert matter has 2 divisions, time and Maya, very similar as we discussed previously. And material nature consists of 3 modes. So those are the points regarding the material energy. Krishna is the origin of other forms of the Lord. So this is quite different to what you might find in Sri Sampradaya with worship around Lakshmi Narayan. Here, the focus is very much on that Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu presented, is the origin of all the other forms. There's a detailed analysis of faults and how the Supreme Lord is free from any type of fault. So they analyze what faults are and what types of faults there can be, and then compare how Krishna is free from all of those to establish that Krishna is faultless. So we're not going to go into the details of those 18 faults and how Krishna is not affected by any of them, but that is one of their points. They also bring in the eternality of Srimati Radharani and her expansions, the gopis. And they accept Srimati Radharani as the greatest devotee of Krishna, and that her friends, the gopis, are Krishna's greatest devotees and servants. So they emphasize Sakibhav and eternal service to Krishna in that mood, which is also emphasized in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sampradaya, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the unique aspect of Sakibhav called Radha Dasya, where Srimati Radharani is the primary object of service of the Sakhis. So there's different categories of Sakhis, so this is a point of Prayojana Tattva. There's different categories of Sakhis, and they have different modes of serving Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught his followers, primarily led by Rupa Goswami, the mode of service to Srimati Radharani by younger gopis who don't love Radha and Krishna equally, but they love Radharani in a superlative way. And their focus in their service is primarily to Srimati Radharani. So this is a unique form of Madhurya Ras, Madhurati Sakibhav, which is not present in other sampradayas. But in the Nimbarka Sampradaya, the adoration of Srimati Radharani is there, and the cultivation of Sakibhav is there in terms of the higher aspects of devotional service in their Sampradaya. So they accept Srimati Radharani and her expansions, the gopis, as Krishna's internal potency. Whereas in other Vaishnava Sampradayas, Srimati Radharani and the other associates of Krishna are not viewed in quite the same way. Because Krishna is not viewed in the same way in terms of not being the original form of the Lord. So these are there are some points of similarity. And if we remember back to that quote, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Nityananda Prabhu is speaking to Jiva Goswami, retelling the pastime of where Nimbarka had darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that in the future I will come and I'll accept 2 points from each of the 4 sampradayas. So this 2 points of Srimati Radharani being the greatest devotee and the gopis mood, the 2 points accepted. So we have this very similar points, but there is some differentiation in our sampradaya also. Sakibhav is also available in our sampradaya, but something that's not available there is this Radha Dasya, which is unique to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's offering and followers. Okay, so other points. I just skipped. No, that's good. Is independent. Krishna is independent, omnipotent, and the controller of all controllers, and he is worshipped by all the devatas. So Krishna is the central point of worship for everyone. In Krishna's daily pastimes, described in Sanat Kumar Samhita, devatas come and worship Krishna on a daily basis. So Krishna is seen as the ultimate object of worship. Whereas, I didn't go into this previously, but in other sampradayas, the devatas are seen as expansions of Krishna, forms of the Lord himself, that reside in those posts, and that they are worshipable objects in of themselves as manifestations of the Lord. Whereas here the emphasis is very much that Krishna is the sole point of focus of worship, and everyone is subordinate to Krishna, to Vrindavan Krishna. So these are some details of the unique aspects. Okay, so the process of worship is devotional service, which manifests in 2 forms. They talk about apara bhakti, which is sadhana, and then from sadhana comes about uttam bhakti, which manifests as prema. So prema is the ultimate goal. Okay, so now we're going to look at the Brahma Sampradaya. So this is Madhvacharya's Sampradaya. Madhvacharya, his date of appearance seems to be quite consistent. Srila Prabhupada also mentions, so we have 1238 CE and 3017 CE, just near to Udupi, on the west coast, the southern side of west coast India. What's the name of the state? The Karnataka. Thank you. Karnataka. Yeah. So he is accepted as an incarnation of Vayudev. He performed many wonderful pastimes as a child, and then he accepted sannyas, and he travelled and established the worship of Lord Krishna. He established the Shuddha Dvaitavad, which is the Dvaitavad, pure dualism, that there is a complete difference between the Lord and his potencies. Yeah. So whereas Ramanujacharya had a slight emphasis on the oneness between the Lord and his energies, then Madhvacharya, he very much emphasized that the Lord and his energy are two very clearly separate things. And then in his arguments, presentation, he goes into the details around that. He had 8 principal sannyasi disciples. Each were entrusted with a mat, a temple, and one of the main mats of the Madhva Sampradaya is called the Uttara Adi mat, and that is the link. Our line, our Sampradaya links through to this mat, this disciplic line. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that Sri Madhavendra Puri introduced the conception of conjugal love for the first time in the Madhva Acharya Sampradaya. So we'll see shortly that Madhavendra Puri, he appeared in the Madhva line, and that it was he that introduced the concept of Madhurya Rasa, Sakibhav in the Sampradaya. That prior to that concept of worshipping Krishna in that mode of worship didn't exist in the Madhva Acharya Sampradaya.
Just noticed you had the photo of Bal Gopal there in the previous slide.
Yes.
What is the reason behind that?
Yeah, so that deity of Bal Gopal Krishna is the main deity, and each of the mats, they take time. They have a schedule of caring for him. So they have a very elaborately established schedule of where each mat becomes responsible for a certain time period for the puja and worship, and is looked after like that throughout the. It's over a period of time, so it's not just for one day, but I was going to say a year, but there's some regulated schedule based on Vaishnava calendar events where his worship is maintained. It's rotated.
And that was installed by Madhavacharya, was it?
Oh yeah, it's in Udupi now.
Yeah,
Yes.
It was installed by Madhavacharya.
Yes, yeah, and there's wonderful pastimes around.
Sandalwood.
I don't know. I'm not sure what is the material.
Yeah, wonderful pastimes around the Lord's establishment of his worship.
Oh, I don't know.
Yes, so.
Not sure.
So Prabhu, this worship is mostly in with awe and reverence.
Yeah, so we'll just bring that up in a moment, actually. Yeah, but primarily, yes. So the Uttaradi mat is one of the main mats, but it is aside from the other 8 important mats in Udupi. This Uttaradi mat was founded by Padmanabha Tirtha, and then his successor was Jaya Tirtha. So if you see in our Bhagavad Gita introduction, you'll see these personalities' names are mentioned in our Sampradaya. The Uttaradi mat also split into 3, and they have their traditions. And this is very much the case across all of these Sampradayas. We shouldn't think that there's just kind of like one line in these there. There's many, many divisions, and in all of those divisions and lines, there's many great personalities and saints, and they have had different aspects of emphasis, which have shaped those traditions in slightly different ways. So yeah. So our line comes down through Madhvacharya, Padmanabha, Jaitirtha, and then there was a Vyastirtha, who was a 14th generation from Madhvacharya, and from him Madhavendra Puri, and then Ishwara Puri. Ishwara Puri, also Advaita Prabhu and Nityananda Prabhu are also understood as disciples of Madhavendra Puri. So that's how our Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Vedanta tradition has a link to the Madhva Sampradaya. Okay, so the Sampradaya's teaching is Dvaitavad. He has 9 principles of philosophy. That Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Lord. So, whereas we're looking at Nimbaka and the emphasis was very much on Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan, the original form of the Lord, here we're talking about that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Lord, and that he is the object of all Vedic knowledge. He regards the material world as real, so this is an important point. The Prakriti is real because it's an energy of Krishna. Krishna is real, Krishna's energy is real. So the material world is real, but it's temporary. The forms are changing, but it's real. It's not illusory. The living entities are separate from the Lord, and that they're his servants. There's 2 kinds. He categorizes just 2 kinds, conditioned and liberated. The attainment of the Lord's lotus feet is liberation, and pure bhakti alone is the cause of liberation. There's no other way of achieving liberation. And then the same direct perception hypothesis. So Anuman, Pratyaksha and Shabda Brahma are the 3 pramanams. And this is in all Vedanta schools, these 3 are the main sources of evidence. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur categorizes into 3 parts. The first 3 teachings. The Supreme Lord Vishnu is the absolute truth. He is the object of all Vedic knowledge, and that the material world is real. And the next is 4 to 6, that the living entities are separate from the Lord, and that they're his servants eternally, and that they're in 2 categories, either liberated or conditioned. So even conditioned jivas, because they're subordinate to the Lord, are his servants constitutionally, even though they're not consciously engaged in his service. Because they are subordinate to him, they are constitutionally servants of Krishna. So this is the same as we teach, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught. So attainment of the Lord's lotus feet is liberation, and pure worship of the Lord is the cause of the conditioned souls becoming liberated. So this is just presenting the same as I overviewed already. So Madhvacharya emphasized 5 distinctions. So this point of distinction is one of his points of emphasis. So he said that there's a clear distinction between the Lord and the living beings. He says that there's a clear distinction between one living entity and another. They're not the same. And on the basis of this, their attainment of perfection is also different, because they can do bhakti to a different extent, and therefore they can attain a different destination in bhakti. So whereas in the Sri Sampradaya, Dasya Ras, Lakshmi Narayan, Sayuja Bhakti attain a similar form as the Lord, Madhvacharya taught that you can attain a range of forms in Vaikuntha, from plants, animals, birds, humans, that there's various forms of in Vaikuntha, and that everyone in Vaikuntha, every living being, regardless of their form, is serving the Lord, and that an individual devotee, according to their devotion, they can attain a particular form. So there's a distinction between one, and then in the material world there's a distinction because we all have different karma, different desires, different backgrounds, we're all different. So there's a distinction for both liberated and conditioned souls. 3, there's a distinction between the Lord and the material world. So this is the same as we've highlighted previously, that there's a difference between the Lord himself and his energy, there's a difference between the spider and the web. the distinction between the living entities in the material world, so the jiva and prakriti are different. And finally, there's a distinction between the different objects of the material world. So this is also a very interesting philosophical point, that every object in the material world is distinct from each other, which philosophically has a lot to it in terms of everything being a reflection of the spiritual reality. So everything is manifesting from a potency of the Lord. So because there is that particular potency which gives that particular object its unique characteristics, each individual object is unique. There's no two objects that are the same, although they're all manifesting from the Lord's potency. So time and place are characteristics that always determine one object being unique to another. In a batch of iPhones, they're all made at the same time, but they all hold a unique place in the world. That iPhone is in that spot, this iPhone is in a next spot. They're not in the same spot. You can't say that they're the same. They're different. Nothing's the same as anything else. Everything is unique and everything is different from everything else. So this is an aspect of distinction. So there's no two things which are the same. But every instance of a thing is a manifestation of that thing's Shakti.
But the iPhone is originally all the same. They're all the same originally. It's just when they're used, they become individuals.
No, they're not the same, because every moment one is produced in a different instance of time, and there's no instance, so you can't say that they possess exactly the same characteristics.
They are not identical, but they can be similar.
So
They have
so
different
basically
IMU
that means that
numbers.
they're not the same. So that's his
But all the
point.
materials are the same. All the materials are the same. The quality is the same. The quality control.
Even the materials are not the same, because even the materials also are put in. Because when we look at an object, we look at the characteristics of the object, the primary characteristics, Rup Lakshana, and the secondary characteristics, the Tashta Lakshana. So for any given object to be exactly the same as any other, they'd have to have all of exactly the same set of primary and secondary characteristics. And because that's not possible for any object, because of time and place, no two objects can actually technically be considered the same. So therefore there's always a distinction.
Even the same batch.
Same batch, different, because
Blind.
time and place, yeah. So there's nothing that's the same.
Different scan code.
But what is
Different stem code.
yeah. Oh, that's good. We could get into it.
Yeah.
So then this is my last slide, and this is a very high level kind of categorization of Madhvacharya's teachings. So he puts everything into two primary categories. He puts one category is independent and the other is dependent. So basically Krishna, he's independent. He's Swarat, he's completely independent of everything, and everything else is dependent on him. So then all of the so these are his two. This is quite a good way to understand why is there two. Because there's one independent truth, and then all other truths are dependent on that. So there's always two.
Related.
Yeah, so there's dependent on Krishna. And then under dependence, you have existence and non-existence. So this is quite interesting. It's a bit of a minefield, philosophically, but it's good to just have a high-level understanding that everything has a existent state and a non-existent state. But even the non-existent states of an object are dependent on Krishna. So this water bottle was produced at a particular point in time. It didn't exist before. So it had a non-existent state, and then it came into a state of existence. And then in the future, it will also have a non-existent state. So there are different non-existent states above us of things. But there are some things which do not have non-existent states. So this is another philosophical kind of categorization of objects. Because ultimately this is Vedanta Siddhanta, this is philosophy, which is all about defining the world, defining existence. So there are two types of dependent existences. One is above, non-existent, and the other is bhava, existence. So within that you have spirit, which is has the quality of consciousness, and then you have matter, which is inert, no consciousness. So matter is also an eternal potency of Krishna. This is the point here. It's dependent on Krishna, but it's also eternal. So it manifests objects and they come and go, but the potency is eternal because it's Krishna's potency and therefore it's real. So, and then within the realm of the conscious, you have categorization further. So you have, according to the modes of nature, sattvic, rajas, and tamas, conscious beings, and those are in sattvic, they become eligible for for liberation. Those that are rajasic, they continue in samsara, and those who are tamasic, they receive a hellish experience, so suffering. So these are further classifications. The process of liberation is also unique in Madhava's teachings. He also teaches a pathway to liberation that's not quite direct like ours. We talk about becoming fully Krishna conscious, from sadhana to bhava to prema to enter into nitya lila. Whereas in Madhava's teachings there's a progression in terms of within the material universe attaining spiritual destinations within the material universe, and then with Brahma attaining Vaikuntha. So there's some variations in pathway, but essentially it's about achieving prema bhakti, achieving prema in the spiritual world. And in order to attain liberation, one has to be sattvic. Okay, but it's not that sattva guna is the means of liberation, it's bhakti which is the means of liberation. But he's classifying creatures, he's classifying entities according to the three modes of nature. So I'll share these slides and notes with everyone. And what we haven't done is a presentation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Siddhanta and teachings separately with our acharyas and our history and our teachings, our process of worship, our perfection. But we've tried to, along the way, whilst commenting on this, referencing always back to our Gaudiya teachings. So I hope that along the way here there's been some useful and helpful understanding to help develop your own faith and practice of Krishna consciousness, and I thank you to everyone for their continued engagement with this seminar, and it's been a real pleasure, so thank you for your association. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to discuss with me. Otherwise, please take prashadam.
I will prepare for